yeah, it's really great to be here at FutureBuild, talking about a topic which I feel is at the tipping point of becoming mainstream within the property and construction sector. As Guy said, I work for the UK Green Building Council. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're an industry-led body with a mission to radically improve the sustainability of the built environment in the UK. And we see social value as a critical lever at the moment for achieving just that. So today I wanted to give you a bit of insight into some of our work in this area, but also hopefully to frame some of the discussion and provide some context to why the other members of the panel, the work that they're doing, is so important. So to start with some of the widest possible context, we live in uncertain and turbulent times. Our politics is in crisis. The environmental challenges that we face have never been more immediate. And there are some really worrying social trends coming from the UK particularly. The UN commissioned a report last year on poverty in the UK, and it found that 1/5 of the population, UK population, is living in poverty. And by 2022, we could see child poverty rates as high as 40%. The report quite rightly highlighted this not only as an economic failing, but as a human rights crisis. Alongside this, we know that 40,000 people each year die from poor air quality in the UK, and 1 in 4 adults have suffered a mental illness. So this is the kind of context that a UK business has to try and navigate if it wants to endure in the long term. And actually, it's in its conversations and in its relationship with society that perhaps business is meeting one of its starkest challenges. Edelman, I don't know if anyone's come across them, they produce a trust barometer, an annual trust barometer, and last year it said that we are mired in a state of stagnant mistrust in the UK, reflecting on the relationship between consumers and then businesses, government, and even charities. So no wonder then, perhaps, that we've seen such an explosion of interest in social value in the property and construction sector. And it's something that UKGBC has been working on since 2017. On the slide there, we have our most significant bit of work in this area, which is a guide to social value in new development. And in that guide, which was co-created with our members, we talk about what we mean by social value in the context of the built environment. And at UKGBC, we take sort of the broadest possible view. And that is that social value is the benefit felt by people, i.e. businesses, residents, wider communities, cities, from any intervention that happens, action or intervention, at a point in the development life cycle. So that could be improved health and well-being from enhanced public space. It could be greater economic resilience from the introduction of green infrastructure. It could be lower fuel bills coming from more energy efficient homes and workplaces. In short, it encompasses the environmental, the social, and the economic. And local authorities, contractors, developers, architects, all built environment organizations have a role to play in embedding social value into the development process. But so do the local community. In fact, it's one of the most interesting things or most exciting things that I find about this agenda is the idea that we will generate more social value the more we present communities with opportunities to co-design and to co-steward. Something that this graphic that comes from the guide helps to illustrate. So, what's motivating these actors? Well, for many of them, the Social Value Act provided a starting point. But in reality, the desire to create place-based social value, the motivation to create place-based social value, has always been much broader than that. For the private sector, obviously there are huge benefits to be found from creating better returns in the long term, from differentiating from competitors, and crucially from building trust with local communities and the public sector. But it's still local authorities who I feel have the most to gain, and perhaps the biggest untapped opportunity. Two of the biggest challenges that local authorities are facing at the moment is meeting nationally set housing targets and also plugging the gap left by the drop in central government funding. We feel that the built environment can play a role in mitigating some of that lost spending. So take, for example, social isolation. We know that social isolation has a negative impact on mental well-being and physical well-being, which naturally puts a strain on our social and health services. So I was looking at some of the research conducted by LSE, and they've calculated that for every 10 years of an older person's life which is spent in isolation, it has the potential to cost the taxpayer £6,000. But what if local authorities were able to work with developers who understood how to approach intergenerational housing, or even just how to approach development in a way that created communities, strengthened social connections? That would help mitigate that cost. So a huge opportunity, but broadly, if we're even though there's great leadership happening from some local authorities, generally the opportunities to require social value in procurement, relating to the built environment, and then also in planning and land disposal are largely being underutilised, which is why the next bit of work that UKGBC is launching on the 26th of March is a how-to guide for local authorities on setting out requirements for social value in those three areas: procurement, planning, and land disposal. So quickly, before I hand over to Guy, one of the things I'm really conscious of is that even though at its heart social value is a very simple idea, making things better for people, the landscape can be a bit complicated and difficult to navigate. So these are some of the things that UKGBC has learned about social value along the way, and that I thought it might be useful to share. So firstly, that all development creates a huge opportunity for creating social value, and it does so at all stages of the property life cycle. Secondly, that we cannot deliver or maximise social value without thoroughly understanding the local needs of the communities that development is in, and also engaging those communities. Thirdly, that when we're talking about social value or measuring social value, it should be in terms of the outcome rather than the input that has been undertaken. Then that when a local authority requires additional social value, that the social value that should be offered should be over and above that product or service already being provided. The exercise we're undertaking here isn't to uncover existing good work, it's to push ourselves to do better and provide more. And then lastly, this is going back to sort of the origins of the Social Value Act and what we're heading towards. When we measure social value and when we require social value, what we're really doing is trying to do a nudge towards a cultural shift where we commercially value responsible business and responsible business practices. So I think it's really important to recognise that this kind of, burden of measurement is actually to that greater end. So that's everything from me. If you are interested to hear more about our social value programme, please do get in touch. But otherwise, thanks for listening.